From ghoulies and ghosties.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And
things that go bump in the night. Good Lord! Deliver us!
Deliver us.
Hello, spooks and spookettes, and welcome back to Counter Hoon's Feature of Fright, our first episode of 2023. This evening, we were unfortunately supposed to do a live stream, but due to some technical difficulties, we've decided that we're going to go ahead and record this interview and then release it very shortly afterwards so that you can all witness the return of our dear friend and making his second appearance here on Counter Hoon's Feature of Fright, former assistant to Lloyd Kaufman, Trauma alumni, filmmaker, and comic book artist and writer, Mr. Thom Demicco. Thom, welcome back.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, guys. It's an honor to be the first guest of the year.
Thank you. Thank you. We're so glad that you thought of us and that you wanted to come back on. So, Thom, you've been absent from the show for a bit, and there's been a lot going on in your life since then. So bring us up to speed. What's happened since our last interview? We understand that you're no longer officially with Trauma. We were wondering if you were at liberty to talk about any of that and to basically talk about what we're doing here now.
Yeah, sure. I left Trauma about a year and a half ago or something like that, end of 2021, like October, November. Basically, after COVID and everything changed the things that were going on, and I had us working remotely, getting back into the city once things started opening up became a big hassle. And honestly, I wanted I needed a lot more time to work on my own project. Trauma is a great place to work at, but it's very all-consuming. There's a lot going on, and I was just at that point where I couldn't put in as much time as I wanted to, without sacrificing from doing my own creative endeavors. It's been loved my time at Trauma, and actually Lloyd did the introduction for the comic book, for the first issue of the comic book. So that was really great. That was kind of like a little dream come true. Besides that, I got back into doing the comic. The comic I actually had started around 2016. I'd finished the first issue sometime in like mid 2017, I would say. And it was, it's a continuing story. It's based on kind of like sitcoms. So I wrote it out as a miniature first season. And once I finished the first issue, I wasn't sure when I'd have the time to sit and do the second. So I kind of sat on it for a while, and then once I started, working at Trauma, I didn't have any time to, to really catch up with myself. So now that I've been, I did some film stuff, worked on a few shorts and a few gigs in between then, and just now I have the time to really focus on it, and I've been getting back into the story and kind of going through everything. So I'm working on the second issue right now, and that's the only reason why I was comfortable with putting out the first issue, because I already got not a decent amount, but I have it's all written, and I have the first 3 pages complete. So I'm hoping to keep this one. The first issue is 50 pages of actual script. I think it comes out to 54 pages with the intro and a couple of pages of there's an intro and afterward, and some just pinups in between.
Well, you might be out of Trauma, but Trauma in some respects is still in you.
Now, of course.
Lloyd always used to say, make your own damn movie. And in this case, you made your own damn comic book. So, and I do remember you mentioning something about it in our last interview. You did say that you had been working on it for quite some time. Now that you've certainly finished the first episode, this big 50-page debut, Spare Roommates. So sort of, and this is specifically a very ambitious project, because not only are you doing this comic book, but you, of course, you already have plans to adapt it and turn it into a series. So,
oh yes, of course.
I just want to know, just tell us a little bit more about Spare Roommates.
Oh, great. Spare Roommates is a sitcom style story, very much in the vein of like late 80s, early 90s sitcoms, like Perfect Strangers, some of the goofier ones. I also really enjoy all the British sitcoms. I was a big fan of The Young Ones, and Bottom, all the stuff that Rick Mayall and they'd done together, along with some of the modern, or more modern stuff, I should say, like Coupling, Spaced. So I really reached after for, to create something that was like that. It was it's a story about me and a few friends. It starts off with a breakup and a couple who are looking to start to get real serious and get married, that all live together down in southern Florida. It doesn't, I try to keep it very much a sitcom kind of feel. I like the quick beats and the humor of it all, but it's got a really interesting story. I hope people will find it relatable, and hope people will be able to just think of that time in their life where they were really trying to figure everything out, and just put everything together after some kind of traumatic experience.
So I'm curious, because since you have mentioned that this is it's based off of sort of based off of your life experiences, percentage wise, be 100% being the max, 1% being least. How, I guess what I'm asking, like as a gauge, how close to real life is the comic book from your experiences?
I'd have to say it's probably about 60-40, 60% real life, and 60% was kind of sitting around figuring out, like, at that point in my life, I really was trying to figure everything out. And it started with, okay, what are the things I want? What are the things that would make me happy? What are the things that I enjoy doing? And I was like, well, what if I was, a comic artist, and that was my life? What are the things about my real life right now that are sitcom-y and, jokey, that I can kind of add into this story that I want to tell about, it's wish fulfillment. A lot of it is, the 60% that's not real, a lot of it's wish fulfillment. And in the part, like almost kind of making a, what do they call those? A dream catcher, but like a wish board or a dream, what is it? Count. I'm drawing a blank here. I can't remember the term, but
you're not talking about the Ouija board, are you?
Not a Ouija board,
Oh, okay.
not a Ouija board. I'm drawing a blank on the word, but I know there's a lot of people like who are into like visualization, like to put up a board. I know one of my ex-girlfriends would put up a board every New Year's and take out things from magazines.
It's a vision board.
Vision board. That is. Thank you, Cap. You got my back. Yeah, honestly, the other 60% of Spare Roommates was my vision board. I did have an ex-girlfriend down there that would make a new one every year and take pictures from magazines and different things and clip on all of the things that she wanted for herself throughout the year. And although I never did it that way, because it wasn't really my thing to, I think in a lot of ways I use Spare Roommates in that sense. I looked at like, okay, I don't like this part of my life. What would be what would I absolutely love to do? Like I hated my job, so it was like, oh well, I'd always want to tell stories or want to draw, make some kind of art, do comic books. I did comics and drawing before I did film, mostly because I didn't think growing up that I'd have the opportunity to do film. Come from a fairly meager, humble beginnings. I grew up on the Jersey Shore, and my parents are very, very blue collar, working class people. They're in their 70s to this day and still work part time. So I didn't have the chance to go to film school or really learn enough about that world, but I could make a comic book because it only took me and a lot of time and effort. So that was kind of the focus for as far as storytelling for a real long time. I dabbled in picking up camcorders here and there and like trying to film different stuff, but like I never, it never felt right. It never felt, the way it should. And that was, I mean, all these ideas were part of Spare Roommates. Even doing the project itself was kind of like I was thinking of it in my head as like a live action, like a sitcom or maybe like an HBO style series, not that adult at all. But once I started to piece that together and realize, okay, well, I don't have the money or the experience to do something like that yet. I do have the time to sit and like better learn how to draw, and there's no better way than to actually do it. So the first book, this book in particular, I think every maybe 8 to 10 pages, there's a minor noticeable leap in the artwork and in the quality of the artwork. I really did use it as a tool to help me get better at art, and it became useful because now I got this story to be able to put out there and just kind of steamroll forward into it. I would like to, within the next maybe 3 years, be able to have the first 6 issues out, depending on time. Really, it's just that the first and it was the first one I did. So the first one took a few months while I was working a full-time gig, and I was working overnight, so I did most of it at the wee hours of the morning, or I would sketch out some of the pages and stuff at work when it was slower and I wasn't drinking coffee to try to stay awake.
So that's interesting. I feel like there's a lot to unpack there, because I feel like I've learned a lot about you that I didn't already know. So the comic book artistry essentially, it really predated your career as a filmmaker in a lot of ways, because you were essentially drawing at a very young age. What I'd also like to know, because you've described the comic book as a graphic sitcom, and so have you always sort of gravitated towards the sitcom media? Have you always been a bigger sitcom fan than a horror fan, or is it's just another side of Thom Demicco we get to see?
It's just another side of myself. Sitcoms are kind of what I grew up with. I think what a lot of the kids of my generation, like later 80s, early 90s, grew up on sitcoms and stuff like TGIF and goofy things like that. Like I still really like Boy Meets World and shows like that. I think the quick-wittedness, like I mentioned before, of the humor, how it's got to keep up at a certain pace, but to be able to do that and tell like a full story that might have a dramatic kind of edge to it too. And I also like the fact that with sitcoms, like I grew up reading comic books. It was what my mom had me reading, like to learn how to read as a kid. And that singularity of being able to sit and read a comic book or watch a 20-minute sitcom and engulf yourself in a whole story that is a part of a grander story, yes, but you can digest that piece and feel satisfied at the end of it, and fulfilled by the conclusion and the story arc.
Interesting. And then so outside of the influences that you have cited for Spare Roommates, are there any other sitcoms that you that are particular favorites of yours that may have influenced you in maybe some unconscious way to write Spare Roomates?
Well, the other two that I hadn't mentioned before that were major influences are Spaced and a TV show with Leah Thompson from, it must have been like Must See TV or something like that in the late '90s, called Caroline in the City, where she plays a comic strip artist for the newspapers. And I've always been in love with her since I was a little kid from Back to the Future, but and then like Howard the Duck. But that show I really enjoyed. So there's definitely big chunks of that. But as far as subconscious stuff, honestly, it's the subconscious stuff is more the British stuff and the style of humor, and maybe like the framing of the stories. There's a lot of, I've noticed with a lot of British stuff, be it Monty Python or The Office, there's a lot of very secular things going on. There's a lot of parallels that are going on through the stories. The British are really good at conveying differences and contrasting through showing like very parallel and very symmetrical framing and storytelling. So that was one of the things that I drew from that. I think at first subconsciously, and then I started to lean into it a little bit more. The one show I'd have to say that maybe some of it, very minor parts, maybe just some dramatic beats, was Degrassi Junior High and Degrassi High were two of my favorite shows as a kid. They used to play on PBS in New Jersey, so I remember watching that. And the severity of that could go from really goofy and joking to like almost way too serious for the audience and for the material that they were working on. So I think maybe some of that might have crept in just because I love it so much. Maybe it's just a little bit of the foreign characters, because all the characters in Spare Roommates are come from different backgrounds, and none of them you would consider European white. It's based on my friends, and South Florida isn't known for being like its own little melting pot. There's a lot of Southern American, Central American, and like island people wind up in Miami and Dade County. So the story is I'm originally from New Jersey. Was born in Korea, adopted, have lived my whole life here, except for about 9 years in Florida and about 6 months in Idaho. My best friend Martin, who the character Martin's based on, was born in actually right a couple blocks away from the Trauma Building in Astoria.
Wow.
But lived most of his life in South Florida. His parents are Dominican and Nicaraguan. So he grew up in a multi-language household, and then the two female characters are based on girls I know from originally from Brazil that came over in their early 20s, late teens. So a lot of it does have that sense of a different kind of more modern American story from different perspectives. Another thing I didn't realize that as I was going into it, that the four main characters, none of them are what you consider white. And I hope hopefully people will be able to identify with that, and I hope maybe it just gives people a little bit more insight into what because there are themes throughout it, especially with the two female characters, because they were the ones who had the most to do with getting themselves to America. There's a lot of themes that go through there, and they both came over in the comic. They both come over at different times, and met in the United States. So their stories and how they got there, were very, very different, and will contrast each other. There's a bunch of little things like that go into it. But honestly, it's a story about friendship, and it's a story about your mundane life, but just turned up to that like 11 notch, and given some humor and hopefully some better foresight and insight into what actually makes people tick, and and the relationships and how they really affect people in their lives.
Yes, and we appreciate how different it is from a lot of the work that we've seen you do with Trauma, and part of me actually wants to see maybe a comic book version in the series, loosely based off of your time in Idaho.
My time in Idaho was very, very boring. There's a reason why it only lasted a few months.
Well, I've been told there isn't, no offense to anyone in Idaho, but I've been told that there really isn't much to do there except eat and grow potatoes. So.
Yep, but they hike a lot. I lived actually on a mountain up there, so there's a lot of hiking and a lot of woods. But I come from the beach. I come from the shore.
Right.
Lakes aren't the same thing as the ocean to me. And no offense to the people who love lakes, but it's
right.
It's not the. I'm sure people would say it vice versa. Like a lake and an ocean are different. And they enjoy a lake for whatever reasons they have. But being on an ocean, sitting on the beach on Miami, being able to look at the water and see the bottom of the bottom sand, not a better feeling. I was actually visiting my friend Martin and his wife Natalia over the holiday over New Year's. I was down there. I actually I didn't get as much time as I thought because my buddy Martin's wife went into labor as we were going out to film some stuff.
Oh wow!
But I was it was pretty incredible. She was due like a week later, but I was able to go out and shoot and film a couple B-roll shots and some exterior shots from the first issue, just to get my beak wet a little bit. Not a lot, maybe like 8 shots altogether, really quick. And it was, like I said, all the establishing, like a couple establishing shots. And our old condo that we lived in, they painted, so I had to like film a different condo that was nearby. But yeah, that'll be I'll be interested to go back because I plan to go back in the next couple months and film all the stuff that I wind up not having a chance to do. It'll be interesting because they did change the area a lot more than I predicted they might. But doing that was definitely interesting and definitely a little cathartic. Like looking at a couple of frames, especially the first frame of the comic book is the sign for the town that we lived in, Miramar, Florida. I want to say that they filmed Top Gun somewhere not too far away from there. It's a couple miles away from the Dolphin Stadium. But the sign I thought was also a good slogan or whatever for the comic book. It's Miramar, Florida, beauty and progress. It encapsulates a lot. But no, that was a lot of fun. It'll be fun to shoot exterior stuff, especially down there. Where it's warm, but I think that the bulk of the filming, especially for the interior stuff, is going to be done in either New York, New Jersey, or Pennsylvania.
Okay, so just to clarify, you've already sort of started some, I guess, secondary work on the Spare Roomates series.
Yes,
but well.
Definitely.
What do you think the Trauma audience will appreciate about what you're doing with Spare Roommates?
I think the Trauma audience will appreciate the spirit and the willingness, and I think honestly, there's a lot of beats and there's a lot of things that do have a Trauma edge to them, as far as like where the content winds up going. Maybe not necessarily in the first issue, but the series ends with a couple of very Trauma kind of moments. Is them of surprise that like one of my the movie that really endeared me to Lloyd and Trauma was Terra Firma. And that's something I think influences a lot of how I write. A lot of the kind of breaking the fourth wall stuff that he does without actually breaking the fourth wall in that movie. That one, of all Lloyd's movies in particular, he was able to break the fourth wall with stuff and talk about real life things without actually having to look at the camera and say it directly to the audience. I think there's a lot of that definitely in there. I think, but definitely like the spirit and the and sense of humor definitely come from movies like that and The Toxic Avenger.
So how can we support you in helping you get the comic book and then the television series off the ground?
The comic book right now is still, I think actually today or tomorrow, it's finishing the Indiegogo, but the Indiegogo is running as an in demand also. So even though it's finished, you'll still be able to order the comic and the hardcover from there. I'll also be sharing it through social media. I have a bunch of retail outlets that I'll be personally visiting and dropping off copies to in the New Jersey area. If anyone out there knows or has works in a comic book store or has a decent comic book store in their area, if they could, Taylor is going to share my social media, my Instagram. Send me a message on Instagram, and I'll put together a little package to send to them. Honestly, I want to be able to get it out there so people can see it. I think in the spirit of as much as maybe content wise, this isn't the stuff that Trauma is maybe known for. I think it does fall very much in line with the first 4 Chroma films, the sex comedies, the first Turn On, Squeeze Play, The Waitress, and why am I drawing a blank on Stuck on You? Definitely has a lot of influence from those movies, which as I started working with Lloyd and Michael Herr specifically, those are the movies that I kind of veered a little bit harder to because I really enjoyed those. They're way ahead of their time, especially for comedy. They came out in the late 70s. They all predated Toxic Avenger. And a lot of the concepts of them, surprisingly enough, a lot of the progressive ideas in them are very much in line with the way people look look at things right now. So I definitely the Trauma. I'll always have the Trauma spirit in me, but I think the biggest part of the Trauma spirit, which Lloyd always has always mentioned the quote of William Shakespeare, "To thine own self be true." I think that's the most important kind of lesson with Trauma, is to be true to yourself and not give in. They do a lot of horror movies and the horror comedies, and those are all made by people who that's the story they have to tell. It just so happens that's not the story I have to tell at the moment. And but like I said, it definitely, as far as the independence and the spirit of doing it myself and just putting it out there the way that I want it to be presented, I think that falls very much in line with what Trauma's always always preached and given credence to.
Yes. So, speaking of, are there any other projects that you are working on, or is it pretty much Spare Roommates 24/7 at this point?
I've always got a few fires burning on the stove. I've got too much energy to just work on one thing. Now, the Spare Roommates issue 2 is one of the main things that I'm really working on right now. Plotting out the pages takes me a lot longer than I would like, but it's also a really enjoyable process. Really just sitting and getting into my own head and working things out is really satisfying. But no, I have 2 film projects that I'm working on. One is a feature-length version of the short film that I've done that's on Troma now, called This Night's End, which is also definitely different in tone and much more aligned, but like the first Turn On, or I would say Stuck on You. And I'm also one of the last short film I did was called Kiss Me Judas, which was it's my favorite book of all time. The author Will Christopher Bear kind of disappeared after he put out this trilogy of books that I absolutely love, with a character named Phineas Poe. There was Kiss Me Judas, Penny Dreadful, and Hell's Half Acre. If you ever look them up or see it online, I know the collection goes for a lot of money, but the single novels you could probably get for pretty cheap. They're amazingly imaginative. They're very much in the vein of, if you're a fan of, say, Chuck Palahniuk, who has done like Choke and Fight Club, very similar writing style to their overindulgent use of metaphors when describing everything. Just really enjoyed the story. So I done with some of the promo people the first chapter just to put together. That's on YouTube right now for free. It was done as a fan film because I was never able to get in contact with the author. I think he teaches writing in like Colorado or somewhere out west. I don't know, but he's like only slightly active on social media, and he had written a book called Godspeed after that to be a follow up, and it was solicited for sales, and it never wound up coming out. So I've never done anything since then. Actually, I do think that you know what? I believe that there might have been someone might have done a graphic novel that he endorsed. I don't know how much he would have had to do with it, but I think I saw something a while ago on like Indiegogo or Kickstarter. But doing that and doing one of the last short films I did, June, for Trauma, with a guy named Dwayne Mendez, I never realized how much I'd enjoy actually just directing material that I didn't write myself.
Mhm.
So I found another project that I'm like absolutely really into, and it's another comic book. It's called Knights of the Fifth Dimension. It's done by a local artist here who was on the TV show Comic Book Man, a guy named Walter Flanagan who used to work at Kevin Smith comic book store, and he's an amazing artist. He did a book that I really enjoyed called Knights of the Fifth Dimension, and I'm trying to put together enough stuff to do the first issue of it, and then take it to him to try to get the rights and see how he would feel about that, because I don't, that's, some people are weird about that kind of stuff, and I mean, the book is definitely very different. It's a superhero story, but told and definitely very different than most. A little abstract, but a little like meta too, where the artists of the comic book are characters inside, not the guy Walter who drew it, but like the kid did a comic book within a comic book, and he goes back and forth through these worlds. Was really thinking about doing something like that. That like I enjoyed doing stuff that wasn't written by me because I felt really close to it, and it felt like something that like was really close to my heart. This feels like something like that. So I'm starting to pursue that now, and looking in. I'm hoping to either do like I said, a trailer for the whole series and just produce that first, and then go to the people who own the book and who created the book, and see what involvement they might want to have with it, or at least be able to get the rights. Or I might just go. The first issue has a lot of exposition setting up the stuff for the entire story, so I might be able to actually pull off the whole issue itself. I don't know, but I hope Lloyd's keeping his calendar open, because I do plan on using him for as a character in that, as a fairly major character in that.
All right. Well, we wish you the best of luck on that, because that sounds very very interesting, very ambitious. So, in order for us to keep up with all of that and more, where do we go to follow you?
I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/Thom.Demicco, Instagram.com/Thom, THOMDEMICCO. Check out the both of them have the link to the Indiegogo on them, and yep, drop me a line.
All right. And I'm sorry. Go ahead, Thom.
I'm not the. Oh no, I was just saying I'm not the most active person on social media. I only kind of post when I have something to say, or something going on. But when I do, I always shoot it up there. So yeah, the Instagram, Facebook, two best places to get a hold of me, and through that and through the account, I know he'll have the link up for the Indiegogo. You can order it through there, or just send me a message on, like I said, Facebook or Instagram.
Excellent.
Should have a website actually probably coming up soon, but I haven't done that yet.
Right. Well, when you do, be sure to send that my way. But we will, like you said, we will put the Indiegogo link, and then links to your social media, so folks can follow you. Before you go, I have something a little different. We've never really done here on Counter Hoon's Feature of Fright. I actually submitted on Instagram and Facebook as well. I just asked my audience, do you have any questions for Thom Demicco? and we had
Oh, great. Yeah, actually, I saw that.
yes, we actually we had two. So Instagram user Zinitz Dude. Hope I got that right. I probably butchered that. But I also happen to know who he is in real life. His name is Craig Willis. He asks if you were to put your own spin on an established franchise and or character, who would it be and why?
You know what? I actually have been thinking about this recently, only because I read a really good article about the about what becomes public domain starting this year. And one of my favorite literary characters, and really my favorite genre of literature and film, probably, is mystery. Given the right kind of budget and the right story, I'd really like to work with Sherlock Holmes.
Wow.
His entire catalog is now public domain in the United States, but that's something that you don't do unless you do it right. You have to give respect. I know the Doyle family is notorious for kind of being a little frivolous and kind of hard on people doing material.
Mhm.
Even when it was, even for some of his material, I believe that his later or his earlier The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes stuff had gone up for public domain a while ago, and they were still being kind of hard about little points of reference inside different projects that might not be particularly in those stories or characteristics that were made later on. Um, but that's it. Definitely, that would be one of the greatest things. Uh, I love Sherlock Holmes. I just love that aura of mystery. But if it was just like random kind of characters to be able to put some kind of twist on, I mean, I'd like to say, hmm, I'd like to work on Count Duckula. Do you know Count Duckula?
I do know Count Dracula. If you
Count
want,
Duckula and Danger Mouse were two of my favorite cartoons when I was younger. More British stuff. Um, I always thought doing like a more maybe not an adult version of Count Duckula, but a version of Count Duckula that was more for like teens or early 20s. Maybe not exactly like Adult Swim, but something a little bit more grown up with Count Duckula. I thought was I always loved the concept of the vegetarian vampire duck. And I thought the characters would be able to be very malleable to fit different purposes. Nanny and Igor the Butler. I really enjoyed those growing up.
wow. Well, if you can't find a trained duck to play your Count Dracula, I'm always available for you, Tom. The final question that we have, I feel like it's for some reason I feel like it's an appropriate way to close out the show. Our friend Alex Hinman asks, "What does he do?" And I think I think this entire interview has answered that question quite well. Unless there are more details that you would like to add to Mr. Hinman this evening.
Yeah. Honestly, what I've done in the past for most of my life is just, I know it sounds really simple, but just live it and try to enjoy it as much as possible. I put all my effort into the things that I enjoy doing and I love to do, and I put as little effort as possible in the things that like annoy me or I mean don't have the same energy output that I'm looking for. And yeah, for a living, I do graphics and I do some printing. Yeah, I also do some like freelance film gigs here and there, but I'm really doing the comic book and working on independent film stuff is what I feel like I'm doing and where most of my energy and thought go to throughout the day.
And that, in a nutshell, is our guest tonight, our friend Thom Demicco. Tom, thank you so much for coming on this evening. And if there are any further developments in the show or any of the other projects you're working with, you know that you have a standing invitation anytime you want to come back to Count Rahun's feature of Fright.
Thanks. Thank you, Kat. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate being able to be your first guest in your new castle, and of the new year. Means a lot to me.
Thanks again, Tom. We'll talk again soon. Unfortunately, Spooks and Spookettes, that's all the time that we have this evening. But be sure to join me next time for yet another feature of fright. But until then, as far as things go, when things go bump in the night, there are such things.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And
And
long-legged
long-legged
beasties.
And
things that go bump in the night. Good Lord! Deliver us!